Hello everyone, and welcome to the slide recording of our latest instructional design lunch and learn setting standards. My name is Dr. James McKenna and I have the pleasure of being the coordinator of inclusive design. Helping me out in the original session was Thomas Amia, a distance learning resources specialist here in curriculum and instruction. We have two rules for the sessions, so if you ever join us live, you know that we mute until it's our time to talk, but we do take plenty of times to discuss what it is we're learning and share ideas and questions. The second rule is the Vegas rule, which is why this is a slide recording done after the fact rather than during the session, because we want to make it a safe place for people to ask questions and venture guesses and things like that. So we want to make sure we get the content out without making people too reserved and inhibited by the fact that they might be recorded and then broadcast. So we have a Padlet for instructional design lunch and learn where we put those recordings as well as resources related to every topic. And here is the link to that Padlet. You may already know what that is because you found this recording, but here it is again anyway. So our topic today is setting standards. We're talking about standards for professional learning. And we're all pretty familiar likely with the state standards, but in 2017, the California Department of Education issued the Quality Professional Learning Standards. And that's what we're going to look at today. We'll overview the standards, we'll look at how they're organized, and take a collaborative investigation into one of them. At this point, we launched a poll just to check the temperature of the audience and see their level of familiarity. And most of our audience members said they knew a bit about the standards. They had a basic idea, but no one was an expert, nor was there anybody who had never heard of them before. We then played a quick game where we did Family Feud, and I'll advance to show that slide real quick. And so in this slide, we spent some time generating ideas about what core elements, core parts of professional learning should be. If we thought about what makes up quality professional learning, what does that look like? And I played the part of the game show host, and we went through and generated ideas related around the actual ones, which are data, content and pedagogy, equity, well-designed and structured. It should be collaborative, supported, and coherent and aligned. This one, last one is blank. I wanted to show you the slide because we actually put this PowerPoint template in the resources, so that's where it fits into the overall presentation. And again, that's just sort of warm up for people to think about, well, what does it look like to have quality professional learning? So the purpose of these standards is to bring into focus what quality professional learning looks like. Having standards gives us a common framework for discussing professional learning, as well as developing professional learning plans and assessing current practice. By us, I mean California Department of Education, County Offices of Education, the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence, WestEd, Institutes of Higher Ed, as well as LEAs. And I'm going to introduce each standard with the official description from the CDE, and then we'll talk briefly about each. Again, briefly, we can't deep dive into each one, but we can always revisit those in future sessions if there's a request for that. So the first standard is data. Quality professional learning uses varied sources and kinds of information to guide priorities, design, and assessments. And here we had a discussion about what of those likely data sources might be. The dashboard, local climate surveys, district benchmarks, teacher and staff surveys, different things like that. Next, we have the interlocking pieces of content and pedagogy, the knowledge and skills students need, and then how to help them acquire, apply, and retain them. So quality professional learning enhances educators' expertise to increase students' capacity to learn and thrive. Now, this is the traditional bread and butter of curriculum instructional services. And we thought about, well, how do we make sure we have quality professional learning for content and pedagogy, as well as what are the other areas we need to be looking at. Next, how does the professional learning contribute to equitable education? So quality professional learning focuses on equitable access, opportunities, and outcomes for all students, with an emphasis on addressing achievement and opportunity disparities between student groups. So how do we weave equity into a professional learning experience? One of the things we talked about is in that content and teaching, having them look at their data and see, okay, what results are they getting for their current practices, and are there disparities among groups? We looked at how the idea of how do we target the specific populations between the different professional learning. So we're not math one day and special ed the next, but how do we support students with disabilities to excel in math, or students with who are language learners, or what have you. Next is the design and structure. So quality professional learning reflects evidence-based approaches, recognizing that focused, sustained learning enables educators to acquire, implement, and assess improved practices. Individual offerings and resources need clear objectives, and the content and activities should directly connect to those objectives. This also includes the types of delivery models. Not everything is a workshop or a webinar. So designing a system of supports that will support objectives as well as be accessible to the clients in time and manner that best supports application of the learning. Sometimes we call that learning in the flow of work. So how do we get the knowledge and skill supports where they need them, when they need them? Next, it needs to be rooted in collaboration and shared accountability. Quality professional learning facilitates the development of a shared purpose for student learning and collective responsibility for achieving it. Collaboration allows for the collective ownership of the solution and have the solution informed by an expanded perspective and deeper experience. And the shared accountability means that no one can leave it to everyone else to do the work. And then we had a conversation about having either participated, led, or observed professional learning. What happens when a team member tunes out and lets the others do the work? And one thing we saw was that it can demean the value of the work, especially if the person tuning out is someone who's more in of a managerial or leadership position as well. What do we really value this if leadership is not really being involved? It also talks about, it can be resentment on the part of the other folks, just that someone is not doing their part. And if they're not going to do their part, why should I do my part? And really, if any one person doesn't really collaborate and form their function looking at these gears, if you pull one away, the whole system ceases to function. The next, there needs to be adequate support for professional learning. This means resources, time, coaching, etc. So quality professional learning dedicates resources that are adequate, accessible, and allocated appropriately towards established priorities and outcomes. Not only does the support need to be in place, but it needs to be effectively communicated so people understand where the supports are and how to access them. Finally, alignment and coherence. Quality professional learning contributes to a coherent system of educator learning and support that connects district and school priorities and needs with state and federal requirements and resources. So then we had a discussion of how as a county office do we support districts to select supports that align with their priorities. And we talked about, well, one thing we could do is have them share their plan and look at it the lens through the quality professional learning standards to see if what we're offering fits into what they're trying to achieve. We also talked about how we could describe our offerings, much as we do as in the state priorities, describe them in terms of the quality professional learning standards, so it's easy for people to understand where they might apply. And we could also look at what we're offering and where are their strengths and where are their gaps in what we're offering based on all the elements essential for good professional learning. So they have 7 standards, and then within each standard they identify 2 or more essential elements of that standard. So for example, in equity, they subdivide that standard into academic equity, systemic equity, and equity of climate. Then they provide indicators. So for academic equity, indicators of quality professional learning would include using disaggregated data to identify critical student needs that require improved instruction and support, enabling educators to plan and implement evidence-based instructional strategies that are responsive to students' diverse backgrounds and needs, and helping educators understand that building on students' abilities, perspectives, and potential contributes to increased student learning. So since this was an instructional design lunch and learn, we wanted to spend some time on one of the particular standards, design and structure. So to that end, there's an activity, and we link the document from that in the Padlet. And that was to look at a Google Doc with the standard, the elements, and the indicators on it, and make comments and questions around things that jumped out at us as a group. And so that document, again, is in the Padlet, and you can see what we talked about. Then we talked about, again, how do we use this standard? And for the most part, we looked at the lens through guiding our schools and districts and charters, and thinking about how we can help them when they're looking at, they've got their LCAP and their stated areas of need. How can they use professional learning to fix those gaps and address those problems, and do that in a systemic and a structured way? We also thought about it, how we can communicate what we offer, audit our own processes, and then think about how we can go beyond maybe one or two traditional methods of delivery, and think about how could we expand the way that we support educators so that they have support from us across the spectrum of where that learning is going to happen. So along with the quality professional learning standards, we have this tool that the CDE created, the Professional Learning System Review. It's a PDF, and that's in the Padlet as well. And we spent some time during the workshop to go through this. And basically, it is a team-based assessment of current practice, looking at each element and saying, okay, where are we at with this? Have we just barely gotten started? Are we just thinking about this? Or do we have this fully integrated? It sort of reminds me of the LEA self-assessment in that regard. At that point, that ended the content. We moved to feedback. Feedback is a gift. So I hope you will join us one time, and if you do, provide us some feedback. Coming up next week, which is October 22nd at noon, we will have Carol Higa, Director 2 of Special Education, and her team talking to us about supporting accessibility as we design and deliver professional learning. And then the following week, Thomas and I will be back talking about zooming ins and outs. So how do we deal with all the little windows and programs and juggle all those things so that we can have a coherent, effective presentation that doesn't fall apart as we search for how to make one window smaller and bring up a new thing. With that, thank you very much. Again, I'm Dr. James McKenna. Here's my email if you want to get a hold of me or Thomas, who's absolutely fantastic, and learn more about Lunch and Learns. Here are our emails, and have a great day.